Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place for creatives like you to learn, grow, and connect. Balancing work, life, and creativity is about compounding the 9 to 5 grind with that need to kick back and throw in a dash of that special something that sets your soul on fire. We all need that outlet, whether it's doodling on a notepad, strumming a guitar, or crafting tales that transport us to other worlds. Amidst the hustle, finding time to let our creativity roam free isn't just self indulgence. Sometimes it's all about self preservation. It's those stolen moments in a buzzing day that gift us clarity and satisfy our souls. A former U.S. Marine turned private military contractor and now a law enforcement professional who has also taken on the thrilling world of writing, today's guest has navigated diverse landscapes of duty and responsibility, accumulating experiences that most can only imagine. He's a talented author who infuses the ordinary with an otherworldly twist in his literary creations, crafting narratives that bridge the realms of reality and the supernatural. Today, we're going to delve into the challenges he's faced in finding a balance between the demands of everyday life and nurturing a creative spirit, while hopefully getting to explore the dynamics of his creative process, how he draws from the wellspring of his diverse experiences to breathe life into characters and scenarios that blur the lines between what's known and what lies beyond. So today, I am thrilled to welcome to the show author Joshua Jack.
Wow, that was a great intro. And now I feel like my head's going to be too big for the frame.
Oh dear. Sorry.
No,
And I
no, no,
apologize
no,
to
no.
your
That's
wife who has to
fantastic.
deal with it later.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you know this, but I'm kind of a big deal,
Clearly, listen to what this girl had to say. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Wow, that was great. This is my first podcast talking about my writing. So this is a treat. It's kind of me and Jennifer were talking before we started this class or before we started this podcast, and I made the joke like, what do I do with my hands? And to the reference to the movie that I'm sure most of the viewers or listeners will hopefully get. So yeah, so yes, I was a U.S. Marine at one time, long time ago. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, and what's interesting is I actually started off as a combat photographer. And how does that happen? I don't know. Uh, but I did, but I didn't. Well, okay, so I joined the Marine Corps, and then I was stationed at Parris Island, South Carolina, for boot camp, as well as afterwards. So I went to boot camp. I went to my photography training, and then I came back to South Carolina. And I love South Carolina, but I didn't want to spend my whole 4 years in South Carolina. So an opportunity came up, and I became a an embassy guard, so a Marine security guard. And so I spent the first year, or about a year and a half almost, in Nairobi, Kenya, and I got there about a year after the bombing. So I'm dating myself. So this was back in '99, and from there I went to Paris, France, where I did my second tour. Um, and so, and what's interesting is that period of time between '99 to '02, everything went from film to digital. So when I got back to the States and was ready to go back into my regular job, I didn't know my job anymore. So, and then also after doing oversea type of stuff and the high speed, low drag type of training that I did, I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that. It was kind of hard going back just to being a regular, just I don't know. I mean, it was just kind of hard to go back to that. So I got out of the Marine Corps, and then the next step, I was going to college, and that was kind of tough. Uh, and we'll get to the writing here in a little bit, folks. I'm just giving you a little bit of, I just give you a little bit of leeway.
Background is good. Yeah.
Yeah, background. So in 2004, so I got out in 2002 and was going to school, and it was tough. That transition, wow, if you have a military member that's going through transition from the military to civilian life, it's tough. I mean, because you go through, especially if you have a high speed job where it's very purposeful, where every day matters. Like you can't just replace this person with another person because the skills that they have take forever to get. So when you go from that environment where you're surrounded by competency levels and you're surrounded by people that want to be there in that type of unit, when you leave that, there's a loss there because in the outside world, especially when you're in your young 20s. I mean, you're still trying to find yourself, you're still trying to figure it out, and it's tough. But and it's one of the toughest things I ever did. So fast forward, like I was having a tough time in school. I mean, I was making good grades, but I'm not the kind of person where I will take out a loan. So I never
Mhm.
pay. Like I paid for school as I went. I was on the 20-year degree program, but hey, I got it clear, free and clear. Um, but anyway, in 2004, a buddy of mine called me up and he's like, "Hey man, do you want to go to Iraq?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, he told me a little bit more about it. And once he got into the numbers, I was like, all right, yeah, sure, sounds good." And because I was at the time I wasn't married, and it was just me, so I'm like, whatever. So, but I didn't go to Iraq. I ended up in Afghanistan doing executive protection for the State Department, doing so basically protecting diplomats in Afghanistan, taking them wherever they needed to go. And I did that from '04 to '06. Um, and that was a unique experience. The fact that I was able to be around in that caliber of folks, I thought the Marine Corps, like, the caliber of folks that I had in the embassy duty, which everybody in the embassy duty stuff was really top notch. But these folks were not only top notch, but they were very highly experienced because I worked with folks from, the SEALs, Marine Recon, uh, Air PJs or Air Force PJs, Green Berets, Rangers, and me, combat photographer. The fact that I was in this group of people. I mean, I was very humbled. I was really grateful that I was able to even be a part of that. And then, you work with those folks for so long. And we did a lot of training. We did a lot of, I mean, it was great. However, that becomes like the pinnacle of life, right? Once I mean, people would have, I wouldn't say killed, but people would have given their left teeth to have that opportunity, and that just kind of dropped in my life. And for those that are listening, whether you want to write or whether you want to do anything in life, the best thing I can give you that I've learned in my own life is two things: is one, be competent at whatever you're doing, and then two, be courteous.
Mm.
Because whenever it came to different opportunities in my life, people remembered me because I was a nice guy and I was somewhat competent. Not as competent as some of those folks were, but at least enough to make it past the hurdles. And that opened up so many. And once you say yes to opportunity, then the next opportunity comes, and then the next opportunity comes, and then other things happen, and then pretty soon you're living a different life. And it's a really interesting. I mean, looking back now, it's like, oh wow. Yeah, at the time you're just surviving. You don't know what's going to happen. Um, so anyway, I did that from '04 to '06, and then I met my wife, and I'm so grateful that I did. And then so I kind of gave that up. Um, and then I tried to get on with local law enforcement in Pensacola, and I worked there for a little bit as a cadet, which was kind of hard to go from like a high speed, low drag, like protecting diplomats to, hey, can you take these papers to the courthouse? Can you do this? I'm like, yeah, I think I can. So that was, but hey, whatever happens in life, and that's the thing, that's another thing you need to realize is you can't live off your past experiences either.
Mm.
Whether you do something awesome or you do something or bad. Let's say you go through something bad too. I mean, heck, we all make dumb mistakes. We all make good choices, but sometimes we make bad choices. But that doesn't label us forever. That only labels us for that day. And you have to pay the
Mm.
piper, good or bad, every day. So, that's another thing that I want to tell people is whatever you have in your past, that's in the past. So every day you have to live up to whatever you want to live up to. Um, anyway, so I did that, and then I joined the federal government. I was a border patrol agent out in Arizona, and I did that for several years. And that was an interesting. I did that from '09 to 2016, and man, I learned a lot about that, which is another conversation and probably another podcast
Yeah.
some other time. And now I've continued my, I'm still in law enforcement for another agency, but yeah, so it's been an interesting. um I'm grateful, because like I said, a lot of people do things, or a lot of people don't do things because of fear. They're afraid of, well, there's too much change, there's too much whatever.
Mm.
And I've always been the kind of person that will roll the dice, and I'm grateful for that because I'm so grateful that my parents supported me with whatever I did. Now I know some people out there may not have that, and man, my heart goes out to you.
Mm.
But it's so good to have people that will support you. Now, don't get me wrong; they tried to talk me out of some things, like going to Afghanistan, but whatever I chose, they finally like, well, we'll support you, and that was life changing for me. And so they've always been supportive. Um,
Mm.
so let's see. So that's my background, right? So that's where I'm coming from. I have a lot of experience. Now, that's funny. I don't write about any of that stuff. Like
Right.
the stuff I write about is completely different than what my life is. And who knows, maybe when I retire, maybe I'll write some more, real life stuff. But growing up, I always liked stuff like Ray Bradbury, Stephen King, Dean Koontz. I mean, these names. And my dad, he was the one that really kind of, obviously we always want to be like our parents, right? My mom always got me my books, and my dad always read, like, my parents are divorced, so really young too. So when I go stay with my dad, I would always see him read, and so I guess I don't know whether that kind of, I'm sure it had some sort of guidance on my literary well, obviously it did. But so I grew up in a reading home, and I never had want for a book. My mom would always get me a book. If I wanted a book, she would always get it for me. And I came from a poor family. Like, I didn't, like I said, I wouldn't say poor, but we weren't, probably lower middle class, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything I
Same.
got on my own.
Yeah.
But but it was such a great experience because it did teach you how to get by, right? Like, I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to not have money. I know what it's like to have desires, like, oh man. And that's, so that's that. I feel like I'm talking a lot about myself.
No,
Which I
that's
know that.
okay. So, I mean, like the first time we ever connected was, I mean, it's been over a year. Like I've had a connection to you for over a year, if you can believe it, because a lot has
I
happened
know.
in like just that over a year amount of time.
Right.
So at what point, like, did you land on adding author to your career goals?
Okay. That's a great question. And that's also a great response to someone asking you a question, because it gives you time to think about what you're going to say. That is a great
Yeah.
question. Let
It
me
makes
think
me
about
feel
this.
really good. Like I've really asked a really deep question, but I
But
really
you
just
did,
was
you did,
wondering.
and I'm, all joking aside, that is a great question. All right, so what got me into writing? Well, all my life I wanted to write. I've always been a creative, right? So, photography was one of them. I tried my hand at teaching myself how to paint at one time, and like I said, back in 2015, I became a certified life coach. And so that really kind of expanded my mind on like human behavior, uh, personal responsibility for your own actions, and anything you want in life you can do if you put your mind to it. And there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of people, and the old adage, you always hate to hear it because it's a cringe factor, but it's like, whether you think you can or you can't think you can't, you're correct. Because you hear that all the time, but it's true. I mean, one thing, and in my life, now I learned it previously by going through the Marine Corps, going through tough stuff, going through things I didn't think I was going to make it, and I made it. And so that kind of bled on into other endeavors, that weren't professional, into like the creative sides, like teach myself to paint. And if anybody follows me on Facebook, not my professional page, but my personal page, I mean, I've shared some of my initial paints, my paintings, which were god awful, but they got better. And that's life. Anything you do at first is going to suck. Like, my writing was horrible when I first started, but it's gotten better as I've gone. Podcasting, I'm sure you can attest to this, and even in your own writing, like, when you first start anything, it's going to be horrible, but it's so cool because you can use that to show others later on, like, hey, this is where I was. It's not, I didn't start off being great, and I'm not saying I'm great, but I'm saying, like, I didn't start off like being competent. You start off by
Right.
being incompetent, and then you slowly learn and you become competent, whatever. So getting back to writing, so I've always kind of had that in my mind wheelhouse. And then right before COVID hit and we had a whole lot more time on our hands, like I said, I always wanted to write a book, and people knew that. People knew that I was kind of like-minded, and I had a family member, and I feel kind of, I'm almost embarrassed to talk about this. I had a family member that told me about a course that taught you how to make a book without even writing. Yeah, yeah. Hold on. But it was actually a really thought-provoking course, and it was talking about how you can go to Fiverr, Freelancer, and all these other things. I mean, that's what we do as indie authors. We hire different people to do our book covers, or editors sometimes, different things, that different aspects of authorship, and we hire out. Well, this took it one step farther, and you can even hire out ghostwriters. So there's some people out there that have books out there and they haven't done anything as far as writing. They've created this whole thing, and I got swept into it because, like I said, I always wanted to write. I'm like, oh well, maybe I can do this, and I tried it, and I hired a ghostwriter, and it just felt greasy. Not no offense to people that do that. I mean, I'm happy that they can do that. I'm happy that, but for me personally, as a creative, it just felt slimy to me.
Mhm.
And then I got back a finished product from my ghostwriter, and I read it, and I'm like, well, crap, I can do just as good as this. And then COVID happened, like immediately after that thought, and I'm like, well, now previous to this, I did write a short story that I did finish like years prior, and it was a western, and it's actually my first short story that I ever finished, and that was The Gun, that's actually available. Um, and I finished that years ago, but I never did anything with it because, me a writer, you know. Um, which we'll talk about that in a little bit too, as far as imposter syndrome. So,
Mm.
remind me on that. Um, so when COVID happened, so I was going through all that. I was learning about how to make books. And when COVID happened, I had a whole lot of time on my hands because it wasn't like we were going out.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had this thought. I was like, a coming of age murder mystery with a hint of the supernatural. And that was just going through my mind, going through my mind, going through my mind, going through my mind. And so I'm like, you know what? And here again, going back to the whole, like, I share a lot of stuff on my Facebook stuff to try to inspire other people on what they do. So I was like, I'm going to write a book. And I kind of shared with my experiences, and so I started writing this thing. And at first I was going to make it a short story, and it's a short novel. It's about 45,000 words, but it was my first ever.
Mhm.
And the way I do it now, some people, um well, and that's a conversation we'll have in a little bit too, as far as like pantser versus plotter and all that. If you're interested in talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I'm a pantser. I can't
Me too.
I can't do it any other way. Well, and I'm so jealous of people that plot or outline.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous because I would love to have an idea of what I'm gonna write.
Right.
And I can only do it in chunks. Like I can only do so much a day. Like
Mhm.
I read these posts or these stories of people that write like 9,000 words a day. I'm being facetious, but I write 500 words a day when I'm in a
Maybe. Yeah.
project. When I'm in a project,
Mm.
because my brain can only go that far ahead without just. For me, that works for me. But so I started writing, and the way I do it is I have I have like people in my family, and I'm so grateful that every 5,000 words I'll send them the chunk, and then they read it, and then they let me know if it's still interesting or whatever, and then I'll just continue writing. And not just family, the people that have trust, I have supreme trust in, and they would give me feedback, and then I would write some more, and then keep on reading, keep on going. And it's the important thing when it comes to writing is creating the habit.
Mhm.
Is because if you ever feel like you're waiting for inspiration, it will never happen. You will sit there 5 years from now thinking, man, I really want to write that book. But it's kind of like going to the gym. It's a muscle. If you start and you do it daily, and that's what I did, is I wrote 500 words because I've read accounts of Stephen King writing 2,000 words a day, and I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I just started working on just, okay, well, I can do 500 words. And I think I read, and the reason why I did that was I read another article where I think Hemingway, he wrote 500 words a day. And I'm like, that seems doable. And so
Mm.
when I first started, it would take me, oh gosh, sometimes it would take me an hour and a half to do 500 words. But as you get better and as you get stronger creatively in your mind and your brain and your different things, now I could probably do it if I'm sprinting. Sometimes I have a bad habit of like distracting myself. Like I'll write a few words and then I'll
Uh-huh.
check my phone. I'll write a few words and then I'll do,
Mhm.
so I languish forever. But if I do a sprint, and there's actually a really good program out there that I've used sometimes called brain.fm. It's a subscription music course, but it's kind of like brain waves and stuff like that. But they have a way that you can put like 25 minutes on the on the countdown or whatever. So, I can put that on there, do 25 minutes. And when I do that, I can bang out 600, 700 words.
Nice.
Um, but it took me a while. It took me a little bit to get there. Uh, so and you know, when you write 500 words a day in 3 months, that's 45,000 words. I mean, a lot
Mhm.
of people don't realize what a little bit will do over time.
Mhm.
You know, the past 4 months, I was going through some extensive training, and so I wasn't able to write daily. I wasn't able to write every day, but I did write on the weekends. And then there's some weekends I couldn't because of different reasons. But even in that 4 month time, I've written 16,000 words.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things that people don't realize. Like if you just start breaking it down by the numbers, and you start okay, and you start. I think what happens is, especially when people start, they think about the end, right? I mean, right. I mean, you're looking at the mountaintop, you're like, oh man, that looks awesome. I want to be up there. But they forget about the daily putting the step in front of you. I mean, you know, every step, every step, every step. And then as you go, you start learning what works for you. And that's another thing that's hard about writing is what works for me may not work for you.
That's
The
right.
only way it's going to work is for you to get your butt in the chair and start writing.
That's
And
right.
no one wants to hear that. I didn't want to hear it. I mean, I spent 40 years not wanting to hear that particular piece of advice and then it makes sense to me because that's the only way you're going to find out what works for you. That's the only way you're going to find out, like, uh, you know, pantsing works for me, outlining works for me, this works for me. You know what? I heard something that works sometimes. You know, because it's such a unique experience. Because the thing is when
Mhm.
you're writing, you're exposing yourself. You're basically putting yourself online. You're
Mhm.
everything that you've collected in your brain, every experience that you've ever experienced, good and bad, it comes out in your writing.
Mhm.
And that was another piece of advice that I didn't understand a whole lot before I started writing was the um, write what you know. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. Well, my first book, and then my second book, and even my third book, which you know they're right there on the shelf. Of course,
Mhm.
we'll get to that in a second. Sorry. Now that I'm starting to talk, man, I could talk about books and I could talk about, like, you
Let's
know,
go.
mindset all day long. When you write about what you know, you can write, you know, you can use your experiences, you can use the places you remember, the people that you know, you can change their
Mhm.
names, you can put two people, make them one. You can take
Mhm.
one person, make them two. You can take, something you like from this town, something you like from this town, and voila, you have a new town.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And that's what I kind of did with my first novel. And it's set in Southern Illinois. So when I was a kid, every summer, you know, here again, my parents were divorced, and my mom couldn't watch me during the summer because you know she had work. So I would always go stay with my aunt in Southern Illinois. And so Southern Illinois to me is kind of like Maine is to Stephen King. To me, it's always that magical place. And if you've ever been to Southern Illinois, it's beautiful. And it's like you know, the rolling green hills
Mhm.
and it's farmland, and it's just one of those places where it's kind of intriguing to me anyway. And it's always been a place of solace where I can go there and I can feel recharged. Um, but I've also written, like, my third novel is set in Pensacola because Pensacola is where I grew up as well. So so saying that, like, I've taken memories, I've taken different people, I've kind of combined them together. Obviously, you know, my storyline is complete fiction, but that's what you can do. You can marry those different things together and make a book out of it. And then my second novel, The Hermit, is still set in Southern Illinois. And here again, I have a cousin, and I used to go stay at my aunt's house. And I used to, if you, for those of you that read the book, I mean, basically that is a fictionalized telling autobiography of me growing up in a way. Some of those things did not happen, but me walking down the street to walk in front of that girl's house, that did happen.
I love it. I
Yeah,
like pulling from life experience because that's what I know. That is exactly
right.
what I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you know it, you know, it's authentic, it's genuine, it
Hmm.
comes across, and so you use that. And then you know, the third novel that I wrote, Grave Disturbance, which is set in Pensacola. Well, since I worked at Pensacola Police Department, you know, I've used my experiences while working there. And so and unfortunately I haven't published anything for almost 2 years. And so we'll get into that too. Like, there's different ways of getting into writing, right? I mean, you know, if you want to make money, write series. If you don't want to make money, do what I do.
That's what I do
Or
too.
yeah, you know, write standalones and completely different. No,
Yeah.
but you know, so like I said, there's different. I can't write to market. Well, I guess I can. I mean, I guess some of books. I don't even know what that means, honestly. I mean, and that's another thing for those that are listening. We're all learning as we go.
Yeah.
We're I don't know it all. I don't. I'll be the first to tell you. And anybody that tells you different, they're lying to you and or trying to sell you
Mhm.
something. Um, I'm learning as I go, and I know there's some weaknesses on my part that I need to fix, but that's something I fix as I go. Uh, Rome wasn't built in a day. Your author career isn't built in a day, or whatever you do. It could be
Mhm.
painting or whatever. Nothing is built in a day. You gotta be serious about it, and you gotta learn every day. But slowly but surely, you get there. You gain traction. You get better, and go forward. Um, but yeah, no. So that was San Pensacola. I used my experiences from that, and I really like that one because of because there was a weird crime that happened there in the 1950s, and so I put a little supernatural twist to it, and that's my answer to that story. So that's one thing. And now my
Mm.
current book that's coming out, I'm really excited about this one because this is the first book that I didn't use my own memories from. This was one completely like, well, I mean, I said in Southern Illinois, so there's certain areas that I'm talking about, but this will be the first story that is completely made up. And I did some research, and it's about a carnival. See, I've always got tired of, man, I'm jumping all over the place.
You're fine.
Growing up, my brother and I, we loved this movie called Something Wicked This Way Comes, and it's by Ray Bradbury, and he wrote a book, and it's a great book, it's a great movie, and my brother and I, we always like that eerie feeling. Like I don't like see, and it's really even hard to call I don't really consider my books horror, but they're eerie. They could be,
Yeah.
you know, uh, and that's what I liked about that story in that movie, and so this story is about a carnival, but instead of the carnival being the bad folks, they're not. And I don't want to go too much into it
Right, right.
because I don't want to be like, oh, well, actually this, but this is my take on that. And so it kind of flips the whole, the carnivals are the bad folks story. So I'm really excited about this one. Right now I'm waiting for the book cover, and it should be, actually it'll probably be out by the time
Oh,
this
good.
this podcast will be available for people. So and that one's called Something Wicked Waits. Uh and so I'm excited about it.
Well, you should
So
be. Is
yeah,
all right. So supernatural flair is what most of your books have. I read Them Bones, and like it's not horror. Like I don't do horror. Horror to me is like axe murderers,
right.
psychopaths, and like
Yeah,
creepy. I didn't. But it's one of those. It's like an intense um suspense, maybe. I don't know. With
right.
the supernatural flair. So is there a genre other than supernatural that
I don't
you've
know.
considered writing?
Well, okay, well, all right. So let's get to that. So at some point in your author career, you're going to write, and you're going to figure out, you're going to think, oh, well, especially if you write standalones, you're thinking, well, let me write something completely different. And so, in 1 year, I wrote, well, maybe a little bit over a year, but I wrote those three books back to back. And that was 2 years ago when my last book came out. And in that 2 years, I wrote two fantasy novels and one unfinished urban fantasy, which is like 93,000, pages. Good Lord, that would be horrible.
Nobody's going to
93,000
read
words.
that, just so you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
That
no,
series you're
93,000.
talking about, maybe break it up.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I need to break that up. No, 93,000 words. And I hit a wall with it. I hit a wall with that one. And I was just slogging away. And that's, so my advice to other people, especially in this, finish your first story. Like write a short story to prove to yourself that you can do it. And
Mm.
then the next story, write a little bit more, write a little bit bigger, make it a little bit longer. And then, the more you do it, the more confidence you'll get. Now, a lot of people would say, well, you should have finished that urban fantasy. And I probably should have. And I'll get back to it
You
eventually.
can, yeah.
No, I mean, yes, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. But but it got to the point where it was just so draining. And I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back. And then I had the lightning bright idea for the book that's coming out soon. Um, that I put that to the side and I started writing that. And so that took me a little bit. And so that'll be available, like I said, that'll be available soon. And then eventually I'll go back to those other ones. But the fantasy stuff, like I haven't, like I put one on Vela, and then the second follow up to that, because I was trying my hand at series, because it's like, as you, like I said, as you learn, as you write, people say, well, should try this, and I like fantasy, but I don't know. This is my wheelhouse. I mean, the stuff that I'm writing now is like, I should have never stopped. I should have never tried to take that hot, that different path, because I mean, although I enjoy it, that's not what I write. But that's okay, because had I not done that, I would have known that. So, and now I know.
Well, and again, you can always go back to it, because I literally, I have, my first two were Christian fiction. My third one is just a romance. And then I've got an urban fantasy on the back burner. And, I just had another one pop into my head that's just right now, it's just a novel. Like, I don't know. I haven't really classified it as a genre other than fiction. And so if the story is there, start writing it, because who knows when the inspiration for the ending is going to pop into your head.
Right. Well, and that's another thing I tell people. I mean, the beautiful thing about having a book or finishing a story is you never know where that's going to take you. I mean, and the nice thing about it is, like, it's my way of leaving a legacy behind, I guess, because after I'm long gone, these books will still be here somewhere. And I heard it. I don't know if it's Stephen King that said this or someone else, but basically, it's kind of a way of telepathy. I mean, I can tell people what's going on in my mind, years from now, and I don't ever have to meet them, and that's really kind of cool. But
and a little
so
scary.
how'd you yeah, a little, I'm in your head.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in writing?
It's really funny. Like, I've always loved writing. It's always been something that I was entering writing contests when I was in like 5th grade, and I loved writing and speech giving and that kind of thing. And I was pretty good at it, but I never really thought it was something that I would do on a professional level. And so I guess it was 2 years ago thereabouts that I had a dream one night, and I woke up the next morning. I was like, well, that was unsatisfying. I have no idea how it ended. And so I just said, I'm going to write the ending. And so I wrote it all down, and I had like 4 chapters, and I said, I guess I'm just going to write a book. And so I did. And that's where the first book came from. So it was just kind of I don't know, the inspiration struck. And then the second book, I was like, I got to find out what happens to the characters from the first book. And so just kind of went from there.
Now, are you a pantser as well? Or a discovery writer? I hear some people take offense to pants writing.
I call it a pantser because I write by the seat of my pants. Like, that's what it is. No, it plays in my head like a movie. And so I write what I see in my head. It's not, there are no outlines. There are no, I mean, I have a notes page where, like, if something hits me and I'm like, I need to incorporate this, or I need to remember this later. But like, as far as outlining a chapter, forget it.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I can't. Yeah, I'm really jealous of those folks, because, like I said, I mean, it'd be so nice to be able to, like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to write today, and then just kind of, I wouldn't say rush through it, but kind of have an idea.
Yes, yeah, me too. That would be very helpful. I mean, I didn't like outlining, like when we were doing research papers, and listen, even through grad school, like I had research papers out the wazoo, and they'd be like, turn in your outline. I'm like, why do you need an outline from me? No, like, I know what I'm going to write. Just let me write it. But yeah, no, outlining was never.
Another thing is it keeps me coming back. Like, if I knew the end, I probably wouldn't finish the story. And so as a pantser, like, it's like a magic of, it's like a bubble, right? If I knew the end, the bubble would pop, and it's like, well, but me not knowing, it's like that building, suspense, building excitement, and then once it's complete, then it pops, and then I can hand it out to other people.
Well, see, what's funny is, like, this current book that right now it's with beta readers. Like, I wrote the beginning, I wrote the end, so I knew how it was going to end. I don't know why. Like, it was just how it came into my head. Is like, okay, I know how I want this to end, and so I wrote the ending at the same time I wrote the beginning. And so then I spent the next, after the second book was done, and with the editor, I started back on this book, and I had to connect beginning and end. You want to talk about ridiculous? Like, that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, but it was like, I need to get to this ending. Like, I was convinced that was the ending, and right now that's what it's going to be. That's going to be the ending. But Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how the brain works. It's just how it works.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like you find out what does work. Get your butt in the seat and write. And that's how you figure it out.
Oh, definitely. And and you'll hit a roadblock. You're going to hit
Oh,
creative
right.
blocks. It is what it is. Like I think with book 2 that I wrote, I literally I wrote it to a certain point and then I took a month off and was like, I can't do this anymore. Like there was nothing. I could not figure out how to get to the next part of the story.
Yep.
And so then I started asking for feedback, which that was the first time I had really asked for feedback in the middle of
Hmm.
writing from people that weren't related to me, like because it's scary to ask for feedback. Because what if they don't like it? What if they tell you it's a
Right.
stupid idea? So all of that, like the mental blocks just kind of set up. But then after I asked for that feedback and then I processed it, I mean, the ending, everything else just kind of poured out. So, like, ask for feedback. If you're not sure where to take a story, there's no harm in asking somebody else for their opinion as long
No,
as you trust them.
no, that's true. That's true. Trust is everything. Well, and that's another
Mhm.
thing. It's like, and that's another thing I want to tell people too is, whenever you first write, make sure, I mean, family members are great. And I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I have some family members, but you really got to be careful about who you share your stuff with. Because, well, I mean, heck, I remember writing, I was attempting to write when I was a young Marine. And I shared it with, some people and they weren't very helpful.
Mhm.
And I didn't write for another 5 years after that. And it was just one of those things where, but I got over it obviously. But that's the thing. Like, what would have happened had it gotten someone that was a little bit more encouraging?
Mhm.
Who knows? Who knows where that writing career? I mean, I could have started writing when I was in my early 20s versus when I'm 40. but but that's the thing. It's like, there even if you get like a horrible, whatever, there's going to be someone out there that likes your stuff
Mhm.
as long as it's edited. Make sure, I mean, because there's nothing worse than reading something and there's just, grammar
Mhm.
mistakes, grammar mistakes, grammar mistakes. So make sure you have a good editor. And I'm grateful because my wife, I mean, she has her work cut out for her, and she makes my books so much better. She has a lot of experience with editing, so yeah. I mean, she does a great job with my books. Um, and but like I said, you got to start and you get better at it. And unfortunately, like I said, if you do come across someone that kind of gives you bump, well, move on. Give it to someone else that will, keep getting it out there. Keep getting it out there. However, there is a difference between constructive criticism and someone that's just being, excuse my language.
Exactly what I was going to, well, almost exactly what I was going to say. But yes, there is a big
Yeah.
difference in the type of criticism that you might be receiving.
Right.
So you also have to filter that very carefully.
Right. Right. And it still hurts. Even constructive
Yeah.
criticism is like,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I
But
mean, that's even after the fact, like those 1-star reviews or, oh my
oh
gosh,
my gosh.
this is so dumb. Like, this sounds so petty, so please just take it as it is. Like, all of my reviews have been ratings have been 5 stars because I don't
Hmm.
have that many. And I know like my mom and my dad are 2 of them. You know what I mean? Like, so you see
Right.
these 5 stars and you think, oh man, I'm doing a really good job. And then somebody comes along and is like, that's only worth 4 stars. And you're like, what? And then you're like,
Yeah.
3 stars? What? And then it just keeps, and you're going, oh my gosh, but not every book is
What?
for every reader.
What? Well, true. And what's really kind of funny is when you come across, and here again, readers, had I got a bad review early on, I don't know if I would have continued writing,
Right.
you know. But I'm grateful that I had a few good reviews from people I didn't know.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest thing, right? I mean, the first thing is like when your parents like your stuff, and then when someone else that you don't know likes your stuff,
Yes.
that's like the biggest, and it's emotional. I mean, I cried when I first got I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. Um, which is another thing. I cry at the drop of a hat now. Now that I've gotten older. I don't really like that, but I mean, I do.
Welcome
Um,
to the world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Welcome to getting older. No,
Nope.
but no, it was a very emotional thing because you put, like I said before, you're exposing yourself to the world,
Mhm.
and when someone identifies with that, or they're like, oh man, that's a great story, man, that is like, it's very humbling.
Mhm.
I mean, I never want to come across as an arrogant person. That's first and foremost, and the fact that anybody took a chance on a no name writer like me. I mean, also, this was when I had a horrible book cover. Your book covers matter. And I've recently updated the first two novels with better covers because they weren't that good. But like I said, the fact that people took a chance on that, and and then they left me some really good reviews, it kept me going. And now when I get a bad review, it's like, it's not a big deal. I mean, it still kind of sucks. But,
yeah, it does.
but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, my book's not for them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other people that will like your stuff. I mean, heck, there's some, I don't know, there's some books out there that I'm like, I can't believe that's even out here, and there people like that kind of, different things.
That's
we won't
right.
go into that.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that whatever you write, there's going to be someone out there that will read it. But yeah, no, it's really funny because I mean, sometimes you'll get some weird reviews. I like that. And here again, no, nothing against readers, not because people have different ways of rating things, and that's here again. But it's funny when, especially when I know people like, oh, well, I never give a 5-star review. That's only for like the truly life changing, and like, okay,
all right,
thank you.
Yep.
I'll give you a 4-star. I'm like, well, okay.
I mean, thank you, but you really don't have to be honest. Just stars and let's move on. I don't need to know why.
I mean, this isn't like but I got the strangest reviews. Well, and here again, I don't really. There was one that gave me a 1-star, and they said gave as a gift, and I'm like, and then the same person gave me a 2-star and said it was a great story, and I'm like, I don't think they understand what this really how this works.
They rated the wrong book.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was just weird because I'm like, I don't understand. And then sometimes I wish you could talk to these people because it's like, well, what did you find? Whatever. Oh, yeah, my favorite one. And here again, nothing against these people. I hope they're living their best life. I'm not trying to dig whatever, but it was for Them Bones, right? You've read the story. Even on the back it says these kids, and it's like, this is a teenager book. It doesn't say anywhere, and I'm like, did you read the back? Did you? I don't know. So it's funny. I mean, people are funny. I mean, whatever.
Yes.
But
you know what?
but like
I appreciate reviewers who take the time that they've even read it to begin with. I appreciate it. Right. Is it always easy to read? No, it's not always easy to read, but they're appreciated because it does help me relate to the readers. I need to know how to relate to my readers.
Right. Well, no, and that's true, and that's how you find like what works, or sometimes they'll let you know like, hey, this is great because of this and this, and here again, like I said, anybody that's listening to this is not a dig to. I mean, heck, you can read my stuff and give me 1 star. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt, but
I might cry.
I might cry deep down on the inside, but no, I mean, and I understand that not everybody's gonna like, nothing. Nobody, you're never going to win 100% of the people.
No,
there's always going to be a percentage of people that is not going to like your story. They're not going to like the way you write. They're not going to like because they can't identify with it. And that's the thing. I think people, when they really dig into your story, it's because they have had something similar that they can kind of dig into. And when people that they haven't lived a similar life, I mean, yeah, I could totally. I mean, sometimes, and that was another thing why I had to fix the cover of my book, because it was so ambiguous that I was like, well, what is the story really about? So I think because the first it just had a tree on the front, and it was like, oh, what is this about? But with a new cover that showed kind of like a ghostly figure, and at least now and I've been getting better reviews too because of it. I think anyway, or at least that gives me the warm fuzzies. Like, okay, this but yeah, so that way at a glance they can tell, okay, this book is about this. They read the back, okay, the book is about this. So that's another thing for those that are writing. Man, you always hear the advice, book covers matter, and even if you have to save some money and hire someone to do it, because that will be the difference between. I mean, there's so much out there. You got to be. It has to be eye catching, to at least get your eyes on, and then yeah, that's the biggest thing. But yeah, right behind grammar
Yes,
is your
an
book cover.
editor and a book cover. Like those are the two things.
Yeah,
If you're going to invest in something, it needs to
right.
be that if you want to be successful. A good editor, not just your mom,
So yeah.
like
So well, I use my
unless
wife,
your
and she's
mom's a
good.
good editor. That's different. That's different because she's good
Yeah,
at it.
yeah. Well, that's true. Right. Make sure that it can be your mom if that's what she does.
Right. Exactly. Mine is my sister. Like mine is my sister
Oh,
and she's fantastic at it. But you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like just some
Yeah,
person
no,
off the
totally.
street, real
Yeah,
editor. Yes.
right. So what writing program do you use?
Literally I use Word. I write in
Really?
Word. I write it, yes. And but I have started formatting in Vellum. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I go
So you're a
back and
Mac user.
forth. I am a Mac user. I will never ever use anything other than a Mac, which is funny because 20 years ago I would not have said that. And
I
then I
can't.
slowly got
I've
sucked into it.
nothing against Macs, but I just can't. I can't get into it. I've tried. Um,
Listen, I mean, I have the same
no.
computer for, I don't know, it's probably 7 years before I had to get a new one, which when I was using PCs, that was not how it was. Like every two
Oh
years
no,
I
no,
was having
right,
to get a
right,
new
right.
one. So
Yeah, no, I use Scrivener,
okay.
and I I mean I like it because the problem with Word, and here again I wrote my first novel in Word. Um, the problem I was having, well, the cool thing about Scrivener is you can have them like on chapters on the side. So if you
Hmm.
need to bounce behind, bounce real quick to, man, what did I name that character? You can bounce up there and be like, oh, okay, that was it, and then go back
Legit,
down to where
yeah.
you're at. Yeah. Where with Word, man, it was like it took forever to figure out, like going back up. I don't know. It was just, eventually it gets to the point where it sped up my process. Um, that's what I like to use, and I've tried Atticus as well, and that's a different. Um, have you heard about that one?
Yes, that one, when I was looking for software to format my stuff, it was between
Mhm.
Atticus and Vellum, but those were the two that kept getting recommended. And I just landed on Vellum because it does the same thing that Scrivener does is with the chapters on the side. And so I use both, like I'll write in Word, just like free flow thought into Word, and then
Okay.
I'll go and paste it into Vellum so that I can track my chapters and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So, um, like I'm using Atticus for formatting, and I think this is the first time I've used it for the one that's coming out soon. And just like with any new program, it has its ups and downs, trying to figure it out, trying to
Mhm.
learn this, trying to, and then eventually you get a little bit better at it. But yeah. Um,
I love Vellum because it is so user friendly. Like it is so just easy. Like I pick up my phone and I'm like, oh, that's, touch and go. That's the same with Vellum. Like it's a touch and go. You just see it. It's just all right there and just user friendly. So
well, if
Atticus
only
did
they made a
have,
PC version of
I know, or you could just switch to Mac. Just
well,
saying.
yeah, yeah. That's a bridge too far for me
Okay,
anyway.
well,
maybe
I
maybe
understand.
maybe once my books take off, and
There you go.
and that's always my running joke. Like, well, if my books ever take off, and I mean, shoot. Well, and
That's
that's the cool thing about having a book, though, right? I mean, you never
yeah.
know where it's going to end up. It's like a little lottery ticket that you never know.
Oh
It
yeah.
could land into someone's hands, and make a movie out of it. I don't know. That'd be nice,
Yeah.
but
So this is kind of crazy. I had a screenwriter approach me about a month ago, wanting to take book one and turn it
oh
into a
well,
TV series. I know. And I was like, I'm not ready for that level of collaboration, but I will
yeah.
definitely, we had multiple conversations, and talked to a lawyer and all that stuff. And I was just like, I'm just not ready to go that far right now. Cause that's a whole nother level of commitment. I'm like, do you know how
See,
long it takes me to write a book?
see, that's my problem too. Like, I don't trust anybody.
Right.
I mean, being in law enforcement, I see the dredges of the world, and it's like, hmm. So
Yeah.
whenever someone contacts me out of the blue, especially when they don't take any time to really get to know me, like
Hmm.
it's just those blind, ah,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's like nope.
The Prince of
So
Nigeria
so
sends you
so
an
screen
email.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so someone could be totally legit, and contact me like, oh, we got this great offer. I'd be like, nope.
Right, like, and I am one, I'm gonna do my due diligence, like, before I even had a
Oh, right.
conversation with this guy on Zoom, I was just like, "All right, grandpa, let's see who you are," because I was, it was just one of those things that I was like, "It does sound too good to be true," but, I mean, there were some serious connections being made and that kind of thing, and I talked to a lawyer about it, and she was like, "Well, you could," and I was like, "I don't really want to." She's like, "Then don't."
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
how long does it take you to what is your process?
Oh, my process. What is a process? So with the first book, like I was so obsessed with it. And it was also when I started it, 2021. And so we were still kind of not really at home all the
Mm,
time, but we were still home a lot. And so there was
hmm
just a lot of um mental stress and mental pressure. And we were going through a lot of family stuff because I mean, those years were hard on extended families who had differing opinions on a lot of things. And so it was just mentally and emotionally draining. And so I just sat down and I would write and it became just an outlet, right? Like it was an escape for me.
Yes.
And so I just became obsessed with writing. And so I won't say that there was a process for that one other than I was just words on a page, like just go.
Right.
The second book, I was a little more methodical about it, and I would set daily writing goals, and I would say, okay,
Mm,
this is what we're going to do. I will say that there were days, especially when I would say, hey, editor, I'm sending you these amount of words, so be ready. And so I would have to meet those goals, which was motivation for me to write so many
right.
words in a week, kind of thing. Because she works full time, and I needed to, respect her time and be like, here's what you can
Right.
expect. Therefore, these are the expectations I have. And so I found that to be a pretty good rhythm. If I set weekly word goals and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And so
Hmm.
that's what happens. Now, I started, why did I start a podcast? I don't know. I started a podcast and I thought that'll be really fun to add in there. And
Well,
so I
I still think we
started,
should do one together.
I agree. It'd
Carjack,
be awesome. Oh,
the
yeah. The
Carjack
carjack.
podcast. Well, we'll hijack your ideas and make them great. I don't
We're
know.
carjacking creatives is what's happening
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that would be awesome. And so but I decided, I wanted, it was more of a network building opportunity because when I
Well, right.
discovered like there's a whole like marketing aspect to writing books, that's a whole nother
Oh
ballgame we could have a
gosh.
long discussion about that.
And that
I It's my least favorite part of the whole shebang.
mine too. And here again, I almost bite my tongue to say this because I don't want to get people to just email me out of the blue. But yeah, if I could find someone to help me with that, that'd be great. But don't email me because
Yeah.
I'm not gonna respond.
That's right. Because how do you know? How do you know if you could even,
Right.
because that's the same thing. I'm on LinkedIn and the number of people who want to connect with me, it seems so flattering. But then I'm like, you are not a book marketing specialist. I know you are not a book marketing specialist.
Right.
Instagram, oh, it's terrible. I'll read your book and give you a review. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm not paying you to review my book because they want like $50 to
Yep.
read my book and review it. And I'm like, come on now.
Yeah, I got so sick and tired of that on Instagram, and that's why I suck at social media. Really, I mean, I'm pretty in it on Facebook. Like Facebook is my go-to. I tried
Mhm.
I tried TikTok, which that's where I think we met,
It's too
and
fast.
I can't do it.
Mhm.
I can't do it. I can't. I don't have the time
Mhm.
to post 2 to 3 videos a day, and I don't have time to watch. I mean, because
Mhm.
man, you start watching, and it's like an hour goes by, and you're like, well, what to do with my life here? And so I kind of got off of. I mean, I still have an account, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
Instagram is the nice thing about Instagram is if you post to that, it goes to your Facebook. So that's kind of like killing two
Yeah.
birds with one stone. Twitter's hard, or is X, whatever it's called now. Um, you know, but like I said, it's I'm a genuine person.
Mhm.
I like
Mhm.
dealing with genuine people. I can't stand this society. Well, I don't want to say society as a whole, but it just seems like today in the society, it's like everything is just fly by night. Like, hey, and it's like, no, no.
Yeah.
Anybody I work with, I want a relationship with because I want you to be successful. Because if you're successful, then I'll be successful. Not
Mhm.
not just hey, let me talk to you so I can be successful.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, heck, even if I became wealthy, let's say that one of these books takes off, and who knows,
Mhm.
I don't want to be wealthy alone.
Right?
like, like I want my team members to be wealthy. I want them to enjoy
Yes.
life too. And who knows. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. Social media is tough. I mean, getting your book out there in front of people. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, have I made money at this? Well, yes and no, right?
Mhm.
I've made money, but all that goes right back into more Facebook ads. and then some. So, it's not, and that's the thing. It's like, it's so hard, especially when new writers are like, oh, I want to write, or I'm going to finish my first book. And it's really tough not to, because you want to be real with them, but, and still maintain that encouraging, encouragement, but you also want to be real with them too. And the tough thing is like people come up to me and they're like, oh, well, I got a memoir. Okay. Or I got a children's book idea. That's not my expertise. And then I try to refer them to other people that might be able to help them. But memoirs are tough. That's tough because, if you haven't done anything that, and here again, everybody has a life. I think everybody is important. But if your story is not, see, even as I say that, it's not really true because, like if you're a motivational speaker, people are going to identify with whoever you are. Like, even a housewife that may think that or someone that hasn't done anything, they may think that they may not think that there's anything special about them. But when it comes to motivational speaking, there's so many people that identify with that. Yeah. So your story does matter. But when it comes to a memoir, when you're actually, people are actually investing their leisure hours to read about it. I mean, heck, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of things, but I would never, well, I would say I'd never write a memoir, but I don't think it's that interesting.
It's not for me. Again, not every book
Right.
is for every, and that's, I'm the same way. I don't do a lot of biographies. I don't do memoirs. Like,
yeah. But like I said, going back to encouraging people, it's not a one book and done thing.
Yeah.
It's a constant journey. And honestly, I think writing your first book is the easiest. Because you fail up that mountain. Like you stumble up that mountaintop. Like you don't know what it takes to write that stupid book. and then by the time you're done, you're like, oh, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm at the mountaintop already. Wow, that's interesting. And then you look out and you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And then the next book comes and you know exactly what it takes to get to the top of that mountain. And that's where it gets tough. Because because like I said, the first book I ever wrote, it took me 3 months writing 500 words every day. That's a lot of like discipline to be like, nope, I gotta write. Or, well, come on to bed. No, I gotta write this. Or hey, we're gonna I gotta write this first. Or getting up early to make sure I got. And see, that was the nice thing about 500 words was because it's not all day. It could take me just an hour. But it's kind of like working out. You got to be disciplined, until you get to the point where you don't feel right doing it. Now it's kind of the point where I only do 500 words when I'm in a project, but you got to be, but once you start that project, you really got to be in it. And so now and it takes a little bit before you're even discovered. You got to, it's so funny because a lot of people are like, oh, they're such a success. Well, and I've heard this before. Well, they were like a 20-year overnight success. Like Brian Sanderson. I mean, he writes some amazing fantasy novels, but it took him 11 novels before he was even looked at.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to write books, and here again, I don't want to crush anybody's aspirations. Write that book. It is a great experience. But continue. Continue to write, get that. Because we all have more than one story, and I don't want, here again, I want to give people the real view of it, but at the same time, I don't want to give them so much they're like, well, why even start? No, you should start, and if it's something you really enjoy, no, then it becomes like a habit or an addict. It's like I gotta get the story out. Especially when you start getting people that follow you, then you start writing for them.
That's right.
It's like, man, I really don't want to write, but I have to.
Yep.
Oh my people are expecting it now.
Yes. So book 1 and 2 are the first 2 in a series, and book 3 is working its way through my brain, but it is not the book that I'm currently in edits with, and it is currently not the book that I just started writing yesterday. It is like book 3 of that first series is so far down the list, but I've had so many people, they're like, when is book 3 coming out? And I'm like, I really don't want to tell you that it's not right now.
Those characters are dead to me at the moment.
I mean, a couple of them are, but that we all knew that already. So, but yeah, it's just like you start thinking, okay, now I have to write for them, which is another pitfall you have to be careful of. Like,
Right.
don't write crap just to write something, like
Right.
to please readers. Like, make
Right.
sure that whatever you're writing, it's the story that you are ready and willing to tell.
Right. Yeah.
Because yeah, you start writing for the audience and not for the story, the focus changes and it's very obvious in your writing.
Right. Yeah. People know. I mean, you gotta be true to yourself and what the story you're telling. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that, honestly, that's one reason why I didn't really go full bore into the urban fantasy or the fantasy, because I didn't want to. Here again, I mean, eventually, once I get a following that follow me for me, because
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so there's two ways of looking at it, right? When it comes to writing, um, you can either be known for a series, or you can be known for being a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at uh, uh, oh gosh, what was that? What was that show that came on? It was. I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember. Jack Reacher.
Oh
You
yeah.
can either be known for Jack Reacher. No one knows who wrote that. By the way, it's Lee Child,
Right.
but only certain people, only a certain few know that. Whereas Stephen King, you may not be able to think of one book because there's so many, but you know Stephen King or
Mm-hmm.
Dean Koontz or and so that's the difference when it comes to, if you're going to write a series. Yes, you can make, that it's almost quicker because you become known for that real
Yeah.
quick. Whereas where you write standalone novels, well, it takes you a little bit longer. But once you do get known for your books, well, then you can start writing anything. I mean, Stephen King doesn't write horror anymore. He writes thrillers. He writes sometimes supernatural stuff, but then he writes like like I just read one the other day called Fairy Tale. It's a fantasy novel.
Huh.
Um, really good too. Um, but and I think that's what I'm going to do eventually is, once I start making a name for myself in this, well, then maybe I'll start, because I can't do more than one pen name. There's some people that are so prolific that, I mean, and that here again, I'm jealous. They can write, 3 books in, 1 month because they're
Mm-hmm.
writing 5,000, 6,000 words a day. I can't do that. I'm very slow going. But I don't know.
Yeah, you're methodical, whereas to me it feels like a lot of those authors who have the really big series, I mean, it's plug and play. It is literally, we're changing the names and
Right.
it's the exact same plot line every time. I don't write like that. Like mine, I don't follow the same formula that a lot of authors follow, which I don't know if that's good or bad. I did have a review left for me a couple weeks ago. She was like, I am not normally one for books that break the rules, but this one broke all the rules and I loved it. And I was like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, I've always been a rule breaker. Like, it is what it is. Like, if there's a rule and I don't like it, I don't follow it. And that comes down to for truth in my writing as well. So I think that the main thing, that if you want to write something, you write what works for you. You write the way that
Right.
works for you,
Right.
and you write what you're proud of. You
Hmm.
don't set out to be the next Stephen King. Don't set out to be the next, that guy already exists. Like,
Right.
be the next
Right.
you and let your story reflect that.
Oh, totally. I think some of the biggest compliments I've gotten that I cherish are the reviews like, this isn't normally my style of book, but I fell in love with it. And I love it, and
Yep.
I like all of his books or whatever. There's this one lady that I've been corresponding with lately, and I'm like, oh, how'd you find me? I'm like, oh, I just found you on Facebook. I'm like, that's thank
Score.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, man, that's amazing,
Mhm.
and yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's nice to have influences,
Yeah.
the ones you want to kind of guide towards. Like now, to me, I don't write like Stephen King. I'm not as gratuitous or graphic or anything like that. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit more. My cousins can read this, and I'd feel okay with them reading it.
Right. Yeah,
But
exactly. All right.
so,
So, what is one piece of advice or encouragement that you would want if they walked away with nothing else? What do you want everybody to hear?
oh gosh,
Yeah.
that's a great question.
While you think of it.
Yeah, what is one piece? Well, I think there's been. Let me pat myself on the back. No, I think there's been a lot of gold nuggets already been shared
Hmm.
in the past hour. If I had, I guess the biggest thing is just roll the dice. You never know what's going to happen, And the thing is whether it's 500 words a day, 1,000 words a day, or 50 words a day, it doesn't matter. Progress is progress. And if you roll the dice, you never know where it's going to go.
Mm.
You know, you're going to go, you're going to adjust, and you're going to get better. And that's the thing. Just start. That's really the only thing. Just start. Get your butt in that seat, even though it's not something you want to hear. That's the only way you're going to learn. And I just encourage you to start. That's really it. Just start.
Yep.
Whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be writing. It
Yes.
could be anything that you want to get done in your life. I mean, if you want to go get a college degree, well, start. If you want to go, start living a healthier life, start. If you want to start running, get off the couch and start running. I mean, there's all these different goals that we have of ourselves, and we get like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. Well, time's gonna go. Time's coming. Time's coming. Time's coming. We're gonna see. Like I said, we've known each other for over a year now, which is crazy to me.
It is, because how much has happened in that amount of time is wild.
Yeah, so much. And you're not ever gonna get it back. We will never get this time back, and that's why I'm saying if the best time to start, I've heard this before too. The best time to start is 5 years ago. The second best time is today. And so I guess that's the biggest thing that I can, if anybody gets anything out of this, is just start whatever it is you want to get done with in your life.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And if you're asking yourself, but there's risk, is it worth it? I mean, how badly do you want it? That's the question you really need to be asking. Like, right. How badly do you want it? If you want it bad enough, you'll just sit down and you'll find a way to make it happen. You don't have an hour to sit down and write. Okay, 10 minutes, go,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think people need to find their why as well. Like, why are you doing all this?
Yes.
And it's not just because, well, I want to write a book because, well, I just want to write it. No, I mean, if you really ask yourself 7 to 9 times, why do I want this? And you're really honest in your question. Like, if you ask your question, like, well, I want to write a book. Well, why? Well, because I want to, share a story. Well, why do you want to share a story? Well, I want to see what other, see how far I can get with this. Well, why do you want to see that? Well, because, I want to provide for my family. Well, why do you want to provide for your family? Well, really because, so you keep on going down that rabbit hole. You'll find exactly what your purpose is and why you're wanting to get whatever it is done you want to get done. So that's another thing I encourage people to do. It's an exercise. It's an easy I can't even talk. It's an easy exercise. Yeah, I get so excited. I mean, like I said, when it comes to mind stuff, I mean, it's really, everybody has potential. Everybody has potential, and and it kind of goes back to that whole imposter syndrome, which we could talk about that real quick too. The imposter syndrome is real, and even though I have 3 books written, 1 short story written, 3 other books written, and another one coming out soon, and another project I'm working on, it's still tough for me to say I'm a writer. That imposter syndrome is never going to go away, but everybody else is dealing with it too. Jennifer is dealing with it. The person listening to this is dealing with it, and we're all dealing with it with our own way. But the only way, and so just get comfortable with it. It's okay. It's okay to feel that way. Yes. And that's why it's like, now it doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, right. Okay.
Right. And if you know your why, if you have answered the question why to the point where you've boiled it down to like the most rudimentary why, and the answer is whatever it is, that's your why. It is valid. Like, nothing anybody else can tell you. It does not matter if they say your why is dumb or your why is stupid. Right. Like, it's yours. It's valid. So do what it takes to get to the answer,
Right. This is a well, that's another thing. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Right. And you just got to be willing to endure. I mean, yes. That's life.
Absolutely. And, put your blinders on. If that comparison game gets to be too strong, when you start looking around side to side, put the blinders on and keep moving forward. Not to sound like a
I'm
fortune
glad you said
cookie,
that, because no, I'm glad you said that. And that's the real danger of social media, especially like on TikTok or Instagram. You see these other people are doing like, fantastic. And we all do that. We all like, well, why aren't my books going? But like I said, you gotta kind of shut that out, or give the time it's due, and then get back into what you're doing. Because that journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and every step, after that. And,
Oh yeah.
you can't focus on someone else's journey when you got to focus on yours.
Oh, definitely, because you won't get anywhere. You're trying to help somebody else up. You're going to move way slower than if you're just taking off. Not to say that you can't help
Right.
other people, or if they need the encouragement, but don't focus on someone else's problems when you've got your own to
Right.
deal with first.
Well, I do say this, like, I've heard this put this way, and this helps when it comes to the imposter syndrome. Be a fifth grader to a third grader.
Hmm.
So, like whenever you're starting something new, and there's other people that are starting stuff off as new, and if you hear from like if Stephen King came and talked, which would be awesome, or Dean Koontz, or someone came and talked to me, that would be fantastic. But they are so far ahead of where I'm at that I would not be able to put any of their advice to good use because I'm
Hmm.
just not at that level. But if someone that's a little ahead of me, you know, maybe they have 5 books, or maybe they have 7 books, or maybe their social media is on point, or maybe their email marketing is which I gotta work on that. My
Oh,
newsletter is god
it's a
awful.
whole
Also,
nother
I
ball
gotta get my
game.
yeah, and then my website is just horrible too. But anyway, you know, it someone that's just a little bit farther ahead, like, it's kind of like running. If you're running in
Hmm.
formation, and this happened in the Marine Corps a lot, when you're running in formation, the person up front would point down and yell, "Hey, pothole," or "Hey, road hazard," and they'd point down and they'd kind of let the person behind them know, "Hey, there's road hazard here." And so when it comes to helping people, yes, that right there, you can be when it comes to the imposter syndrome, well, who am I to say anything to anybody? Well, you're just a little bit ahead. You can share that knowledge with the person right behind you.
Yes, I did that
So
actually.
that.
Well, yeah, and I did that this morning. A girl was asking about beta readers. Now, book two, that was the first time I'd used beta. I didn't use beta readers on the first one. But on
Mm,
book two, I decided I wanted to, and it was a game changer for me. It was so good to get the feedback that early on. And so somebody had asked on TikTok, they said, how do you take it personally when somebody doesn't give the feedback that you're looking for, or they just don't give feedback at all? And I'm like, no, you don't take it personally. And so that was an opportunity to say, hey, I've had this experience. I can share with you what
hmm.
I've experienced. Now, does that mean that's going to work exactly the same for you? Probably not, because no two of
Right.
us are going to have the same experience. And but it's somewhere to start from. So if you can reach out and be like, hey, it also, garners new followers and another network that you can reach out to when you have questions that maybe somebody
Right.
else has faced as well.
Right. And I mean, like I said, I mean, it's all about, you know, lift, filling the water in the harbor for, all the ships to float
Yep,
higher. So,
that's
I'm a
right.
big believer in that. So,
And that's the whole point of this whole connected conversations, is to connect, have these conversations so we can form a network of creators who can say, hey, I got your back, or here's what
hey,
worked for me and what didn't work for you.
right. Totally. Totally.
Yep. All right, well, tell us how we can connect with you and your work, so that listeners can find your new book.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Amazon. Well, actually, you can find me pretty much anywhere. If you just Google author J.E. Jack, that's the name I write under, J.E. Jack. So if you go to Amazon, you type that up. I'm on Facebook. Like I said, you can go to Facebook and type in author J.E. Jack. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, although I don't use those as much. My email is author Jack at Gmail. I'm more than happy to talk to you if you have any questions, or you need advice. Like I said, I'm approachable. I'm more than happy to talk with you. Like I said, as long as it's genuine.
I was going to say, make sure you put in your subject line, I'm a real person.
Yeah, yeah. I am a real person. You know. But yeah, no. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty approachable. I'm down to earth. I'm not really, you know, my my head is still the same size it should be, hopefully.
I mean, he's
But yeah,
here,
so
so it's not that bad.
yeah, yeah,
Stick to Amazon, send him an email, find him on Facebook, and I'll make sure
yeah,
all of that's in the show notes, and so that people can
yeah,
just
pretty
click on it
much.
and go there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
You,
Thanks for being here and having this
yeah.
conversation. All of a sudden my camera has gone blurry, and so I don't know
I
what
just thought
that's
that was my
about, but
eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh,
nope.
I'm getting older.
Apparently the end of this conversation is going to be a
There
blur.
you go.
There we go. But thanks for being
Uh,
here and being part of the conversation. Like, I'm glad we finally got to sit down and talk outside of TikTok and
oh,
Facebook.
definitely. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you reaching out and invite me to this. This like I said, this was such a treat. This is my first one. So,
Well, I
but
only
and
harassed you like 4 times to get you here.
yeah, well, it's a long time coming, but I'm here.
You're here, and I'm very thankful for that. So thank you. Authors, if you're looking for resources to write better stories and more relatable characters, check out my website, jcarwrites.com/authors.